Thank you for joining us. My name is Jaime Gonzalez, and I am country manager in GeneXus at our headquarters in Montevideo, Uruguay. I'm going to be your host today in this webinar by Sergio Prusky, entitled What's New in GeneXus 16. Sergio is VP of USA Operations at GeneXus Consulting, and he has been developing applications with GeneXus for over 25 years. He's a partner of Untitled Software, an ERP company that focuses in the apparel industry. He joined GeneXus Consulting in 2018 to help GeneXus clients in the USA reach their full potential. So, as you know, at GeneXus, we are taking some measures to make your life more comfortable during these splendid and unusual times. So we are increasing the number of webinars, and we have launched a new webinar site where we are inviting you to join us in our weekly seminars, and also to check out those webinars which you may have missed. You will see in our chat the link to that webinar, so you can keep ahead and register in all the interesting topics that we'll be handling. And we are going to now give the word to Sergio, and we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So we encourage you to launch your questions towards the end of the session. Thank you very much again, and we hope you enjoyed this webinar. Sergio, all yours.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We are going to cover a lot of topics today. The idea here is to tell you what's available, not necessarily how to use it. There's going to be other webinars probably to cover topics, and if you have any particular topic after sitting through this webinar, if you want us to present something in depth, let us know with an email, and we will probably cover that in a future webinar. So with that said, I'm going to get straight into the material for today. So we are going to be talking about what's new in GeneXus 16. We are going to cover this from three different perspectives: technology perspective, business, and design. Any application today, digital transformation, basically is rooted in these three concepts. And we are going to be talking about how applications have changed and how in the user world, people now have access to applications like they didn't before, great user interfaces, and they are bringing those requirements to the enterprise world. So we're going from a single experience to a multiple experience type of applications. If we look at technology, in particular in GeneXus, we are going to cover some of the things that are very, very common today in any application. So we can't really develop any medium-sized or large application without interfacing with the world. So GeneXus has improved the integration with the rest of the world tremendously. It's one of the things that, starting with earlier versions of GeneXus, but even in GeneXus 16, it has improved so much. Here's an example of how to integrate with a REST service to process whatever that REST service is publishing. And we can just cut and paste directly from the help in the website of the REST provider to the integration in GeneXus, and we get the information in a structure, an SDT directly without having to even touch anything, which is a tremendous amount of time saving. And you can see over here how we have all these different types of integrations. I mean, we're not going to go through them. So if integration is one of the topics that you're interested in, let us know, and we will probably have a webinar just on integrations. We also want to make your life as a developer easier by improving the debugging, logging, testing. All of those things are, there's many options. In particular, this is the new log object that allows you to now directly write to a client log for both Java.NET, whatever application you're developing. We have improved the security side of applications, which is a constant challenge, right? As computers get faster, security becomes a bigger concern because brute force attacks become possible, which didn't before. So we have new cryptographic functions and ways to store passwords, one-way and two-way encryption processes. There's a whole new set of options to do that. There's also Sftp and Ftps, which are similar but not the same technologies. One is basically, Sftp, as you probably already know, is based on the SSH protocol. Ftps is basically FTP with a layer with an encryption layer. But basically, we can now access those protocols directly from GeneXus. I would have to double check if that is in upgrade 8 or upgrade 9 of GeneXus, which is upgrade 9, as you probably know, is not yet released, but it's either released or it's going to be released very, very soon. Some improvements in Knowledge Manager. This is just one of my favorite because many times when we want to divide our project into smaller projects, we want to export just the structure of transactions. And this is one of the things that is now available to export just the transactions, just the structure, but not the rules and events and forms and everything else. So that makes it easy to divide an application into different knowledge bases. So another thing that is very time consuming, or it can be time consuming, is deployment units, deployments in general. And we do have the option to, the deployment units have been available, I think probably since version 15, but now we have so many more options of how to deploy an application local, which is the traditional way of doing it, right, to our own server, or we can use AWS or IBM Bluemix or Docker containers. So we have many ways of deploying applications, and GeneXus does all the hard work of putting that into a deployment for us. It keeps track of versions, and it does a lot of things. If you haven't been using deployment units to deploy your applications, I highly recommend that you do that. Now, switching gears to a very high-level topic that many people are interested in knowing what GeneXus is doing about. It's impossible to turn on the news, and I'm not talking about just technology news, but in general, right, without talking about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has become one of those things that, well, for many, many years, it was one of those promises that IT seemed to never be able to fulfill. But now, again, with computers being faster and some algorithm advances and other things, we're able to do some things with AI that we couldn't before. In particular, big advances in natural language, big advances in image recognition. So those are things that are now available from GeneXus. We support all these platforms that you see here on the slide. So I encourage you to think of what can you do to help your businesses develop, use these new tools, because this is not something that's going to come from the user base. I think it's something that we have to push from the technology side of businesses. So we have been certified by SAP. We have a partnership with them as a co-innovator, and we have done some very interesting projects. There are some other webinars that talk specifically about artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, we don't have time, as I said before, to cover all of this, but if you're interested, there are a lot of resources to dive in and learn more about artificial intelligence. Okay, for a second there, my slides got stuck. So anyway, there's there's a page that you can see the link at the bottom, and if you don't have access through this platform to the link, we can make it available to whoever wants to access it. But there's a few great already in production uses of artificial intelligence with GeneXus that are really very interesting. One of the things about AI is that the projects are always interesting. And don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's not like accounting. If you're doing accounting software, that's great. But accounting is very hard to make it interesting, but artificial intelligence is almost like naturally interesting. And there's many advantages to using GeneXus with artificial intelligence. And that is one of them is that it's multi-platform. So you don't have to decide today which platform you're going to use. And even if some of the platforms are better at something and another platform might be better at something else, like one is better at natural language, the other one at image recognition, for example, you can choose which platform you're going to use for each project. Okay, so that's something that we like a lot, and that we've made a lot of progress. So something going to server side development and what we're working on. So the two main platforms, right, are C# and Java, right? So in C#, Microsoft is pushing basically the development towards what is now called .NET Core, right? It's like an evolution of the .NET framework. So we are also going that direction. It's the direction that that Microsoft is taking, and we are following that direction. And one of the big benefits of .NET Core is that we can run our applications also on Linux machines. So that's an interesting development that's been going on for a few years. .NET Core is part of the C#. In terms of licensing, it's part of the same generator, and it's ready to use. I mean, there's very few things that are not working there yet, but it's ready. It's ready for you to go and try it and use it and put applications in production. In the Java world, we have moved to it's not okay there. On Java, we've moved to Java 8 or higher, and mostly because of security reasons. In my own experience, we were interfacing with Authorize.net for credit card authorization, and the application basically changes in requirements for security, like SSL levels and stuff, forces you go to Java 8. So before we were using Tomcat with Java 7, same application, no changes in the code, not even recompiling. We changed the version of Java to 8, and it started working what wasn't working. So I recommend everybody, if you're not on Java 8 already, to move to Java 8, and it's going to be a requirement anyway for GeneXus applications. So you might do you probably want to do this sooner than later. There's many things that have been improved in GeneXus 16 when it comes to mobile, and I would say that mobile is one of the reasons why you have to be in the latest version of GeneXus. It's not a choice. It's almost like you have to. In other scenarios, like web applications, you have the choice sometimes not to upgrade. You could be in version 15, even evolution 3, and you would be okay. But when it comes to mobile, you can't. You can't because the mobile platforms, both iOS and Android, move too quickly. And for us to comply with the requirements, we have to make changes that are obviously not available in older versions. So we do support all the newest versions of each platform, Xcode 11, and we also for Android, Android 10. So if you want to deploy to the stores for Android, you need to be at least using GeneXus 16 upgrade 3 or newer, and for iOS you need to be on really the latest upgrade, which is upgrade 8. So yes, that's what happens. I mean, especially with Apple, you really almost always have to be at the latest level. But with this being at the latest level of or the latest upgrade of GeneXus, does have the big benefits for mobile, because a lot of the new features that are part of these upgrades are related to mobile. So there's many things that we could say about why mobile, and that again it's a whole it's a topic that really requires its own webinar. So we're not going to get into a lot of detail when it comes to mobile. But we can talk about to me, the most obvious reason to use GeneXus, of course, for mobile is that we don't have to do double the work, right? We don't have to do it for iOS and then Android. So that saves a lot of time. So one of the changes that we have taken is to make the standard libraries public or open source. So that gives our all of our clients the the peace of mind that this code is now available. It's open source. You can download it. You can look at it. You could possibly change it if you want to, but more than anything, you can audit it. So this has some interesting advantages, and I think that continuing with the GeneXus philosophy or no runtime royalties, I think that it really goes hand in hand with that. But it could improve the also the quality and the collaboration in making these libraries better. So now we're gonna totally change gears and talk about a subject that that it's not an option anymore. And I think that the reason that the design is not an option anymore is because our users are now participating in this in their own lives with many offerings for software, right? So we have to match their expectations in a way that we didn't have to before. So if we are talking about GeneXus, or actually this goes beyond GeneXus, there's the concept of design systems. So design systems are basically a set of tools or a set of actually standards that we define in order to help us develop applications that are consistent, that are easy to use, and that they're easy to maintain. So it's basically defines how an application should look like. And this is something that should make the programmer, it should be independent of the programming as much as possible, right? So it's the guidelines of how any aspect of the application should look like in terms of user interface. So we want to help you be able to accomplish this, and we do this at different levels. So there's the internal or bundled design systems that are part of the GeneXus platform. There's the Fiori, which is the SAP version of a design system. So there's version 2 and version 3. They're very well-defined design systems. You can download the definition from SAP's website, several hundred pages defining how it works. We have also the Carmine that you're probably familiar with, and there's a dark Carmine version also. There's accelerators, which are third-party patterns and design systems. So like GeneXus Consulting, we have K2B tools, and there's other offerings from other vendors. And then you can also do your own work, or you can define your own design system if that's what you want. And for that, there's a new object called, which is a user control 2.0. We did have user controls before, but they were outside the knowledge base. The definition of the user control was outside the knowledge base, and now it's part of the knowledge base. And we can also import an HTML web component directly into a user control inside of GeneXus. So user controls in GeneXus are like any other object. They're going to be, you can import it, export it. It will be part of your GX server knowledge base. So you can share them. You can have versions, et cetera, all the benefits of it being just another GeneXus object, and you can use them wherever you want to use them. So user controls are great for user interface. They're great for interfaces with other systems. You can encapsulate there like CSS, JavaScript. So those are the things, and HTML basically. So a user control can solve anything that can be basically usually things that have to do with external systems. And you can use any HTML web components that you can find outside of in the marketplace. So you're not limited to GeneXus. So the other new object to help you with this is Stencils. So Stencils are basically group of screen elements that have no code. So they're basically defined, again, they're a GeneXus object. So you can just create a new stencil. You can create them from scratch, or you can import them from Sketch. But I think it's important to know that you can also import them from Sketch. So the import from Sketch is really an option if you are working already with designers that have Sketch, but you can also take elements from inside your GeneXus knowledge base and convert them to a stencil. So a stencil, this is an example where there's a picture, the speaker name, and the speaker company. So that is the way we're going to display a speaker, let's say, in our application, and we can then insert this stencil into any form. Okay, and the stencils can be used both in web and mobile applications, so we can be consistent through even different platforms. So why use design systems? Well, UI consistency, productivity for sure, and those are basically the main reasons, right? Consistency, productivity. So in my opinion, a programmer should never have to make UI decisions when they're doing their work. It really slows down the development process. So by making the design separate from the actual logic of the system, we can improve performance by an order of magnitude, I think. So another thing that we have available now in GeneXus 16 is progressive web applications. So progressive web applications are basically they're basically web applications, but they share something with web apps. With mobile apps. So the idea of progressive web applications is that you can bring some of the benefits of an app to a web page. And there's different APIs that allow you to access more or less of the device, let's say hardware. Sometimes you are able to access things like maps and maybe camera and other things, depending on the device and other options. One of the things that you can do, and here's an example of the same application as a web page and as a progressive web application. So the progressive web application, if you add it as an app, and you have that option if you use Chrome, or whether it's a browser, on a desktop or a mobile device, it basically looks like very much like an app. There's no more borders and address and stuff like that. So it really helps make that web application look like a mobile app. Now, there's some limitations, of course, so sometimes the choice will be an app, but it does give us a little bit of a bridge there to, in some instances, a progressive web application might be the right way to go. So how do we do it? In GeneXus, we just change for a main object, we just change the web application to progressive, and that's pretty much all we have to do. We don't need to do any special programming. And if you are interested in this, there's some interesting tools to make sure that the configuration is correct, etc., that are very useful. And you can read more on the wiki, or maybe this is a topic that we want to have another webinar about if enough people are interested. So another thing that is happening in the world is that applications are becoming more conversational. So from a technology point of view, I guess that could be considered like, or it could go under the umbrella of chatbots. So chatbots are generated. There's an object now, a chatbot object inside of GeneXus. And basically, it's a conversation that happens between an end user and our application. And to support that, we will access a natural language processing engine to interpret those that conversation. So one of the biggest problems in this chatbot world, whether it's GeneXus or not GeneXus, is the context, right? When we talk, the context of a conversation is very for human beings. We understand the concept of context, but computers don't. But that's why we have a whole set of options to manage that context. But inside of GeneXus, there's like I said, an object that is a chatbot object, and we will define the flows basically of that conversation. So we will track the input and output, the input from the user. They can type in natural language, just like if they were talking to another person, and we will identify the different components of that communication to assign them to what we consider our context. So out of that conversation, what is like the important information? Like if it was someone asking about an order, what is the order number, or what is the customer number, what is the customer name, etc., etc. And GeneXus will help us keep track of all of that and present that in a user interface that is easy for the user to understand. So one of the biggest advantages of doing this inside of GeneXus is that we can integrate with the rest of the system. So when we have our communication through a chat dialogue with the user, we can include their information that is not part of the chatbot, but it's part of the regular standard database, like any information that we will have access to the whole application and present that to the user, which is it's extremely important in that conversation. So cut down on support costs, reduce call center costs. Basically, it's about like having automating something that instead of someone having to do that, a person having to answer the chatbot, the chat, we can have a chatbot, at least for the simple interactions that are repetitive. Another thing that we have worked on is reporting, or basically presenting information to users. And for that, there's a new object again, which is the dashboard. So this is an example of a dashboard that we did for a payment processing company. And basically, each one of those components that you see on the screen, you can see that there's different components. Each one of those is a GeneXus query, and it's just drag and dropped into the dashboard and presented to the user. And it's something that is extremely simple to use, and it has a huge impact. So if you haven't yet had a chance to test these dashboards, I recommend that you do, and you'll be surprised how easy it is to create something that is pretty amazingly nice looking. I think the main thing here is that businesses require, it's not just something that they want to have, but they require that we provide dashboards with KPIs. It's really something that is at this, for business to be able to stay competitive, they really need to be able to have the information that they need. So I highly recommend that you take the time to download the application that was developed for the GeneXus 29 user event. It's open source, so you can download it, see everything. It has examples for progressive web applications, for mobile, chatbots, AI. It has a lot of different examples that you can, it's a real application. It's pretty complex. And at the same time, it's a great source of knowledge. So I highly recommend that you use this link at the bottom to download it and use it as a learning tool. Again, I'm not sure if you have access to this address, which is pretty long to type, but if not, just send us an email and we'll make this available to you. So we said that there was 3 parts to, you know, to this to an application, right? Or for more than to an application, for the way that applications evolve, right? Technology, design, and business. So now we're gonna move into the business side of things. And one of the things that we have worked a lot on is DevOps. So we have incorporated a lot of these concepts into the GeneXus cycle. If you have been using GeneXus for a while, you have noticed how we have moved from versions that were basically built around functionality to versions that are built around the calendar. So there's pretty much one new upgrade every 2 months, and maybe a major release or a major number change every 2 years or something like that, approximately. So we have developed internally, and we want our customers to do the same, the concept of if we can automate it, let's automate it. So we really think that this is something that can reduce the amount of work we're doing, improve the quality, and well, basically allow us to improve the speed or increase the speed of releasing new applications to our clients. One of the things that you can do, of course, is and that that's a whole new subject, but is integrate with Jenkins, which is a tool that is used to help with the DevOps. But if you don't feel like you want to go all the way and you want to do something relatively simple, you can define what is already available in GeneXus, just build events, which are events that you can define to happen before and after you build that deployment. So those are simple tools that we have for to help us with DevOps, and then of course integrated with Jenkins can actually take us to the next level. So we have both options depending on how sophisticated we want to be. One of the main tools we have, of course, is GeneXus Server. GeneXus Server has become a central part of GeneXus development. We find it difficult to develop applications without GX Server anymore. I would recommend anyone that is not using GX Server right now to talk to me or anybody else in our team and ask that we facilitate a way for you to at least try it and see the benefits, because they are huge. So from basically from version management to sharing of knowledge in a seamless way, and it really changes the way that teams of GeneXus work together. So highly recommended that you look into GX Server if you're not using it right now. So we ran out of space here, so many things to talk about GX Server. Our slide is not big enough to handle everything. But basically, source control management is the main reason why you want to use GX Server. But once you start using it, you'll see that you will be like, well, how could we even work before using GX Server? So the other thing that has that is now available in GeneXus 16 is GX Test. So obviously, we want to be able to test our applications as easily as possible. And now we have unit testing included in GeneXus and UI testing, so both for web and smart devices. So how does it work? Basically, unit tests are and UI tests are GeneXus objects, and you can just go and create a unit test and create basically a procedure that will test your whatever process you're trying to test and see if the result is is adequate. So as an example, these are the tests. I know it's kind of small, but these are the tests that were put together to test the an app that was developed by GeneXus and many partners in Uruguay to track the coronavirus. This is the official government app, and you can see the list, even if you can't read the exact what each one of these tests does. You can see the extent of this testing, and this is an app that was put together obviously in the last few weeks very quickly, but testing was of course very important. The last thing you want to do is develop deploy an application that is this critical and that has errors, right? So testing very important. Maybe we'll also get into more about testing in a separate webinar, but if you have any questions, again, just write us. Deployment to multiple environments. So I think we saw in a previous slide how we can create a deployment and select where that deployment is going to. Some of our not that many, but a few of our clients are now testing containers and experimenting on how this can work. And you can also use a command line, as you can see at the bottom, using MS Build. You can also create automate deployments by using command line if that's something that you want to put as part of a script or something else. So DevOps, again, scalability and basically consistency and avoiding manual errors would be the main things that we want to do here. So we changing now to the business process management. Some of the things that we have changed are actually a lot of things are internal. They're not visible from the outside. They have to do with scalability. As time has passed, some of our clients have started to use the BPM engine for larger and larger projects. One of our own projects was for a large human resources organization with more than 90,000 employees, more than 60 processes, which is not, that part is not so big, right? But some of the processes were complex. So it's something that we have made huge improvements in scalability and also in performance. So another topic that is pretty much, if it's not, it should be part of every application that we develop, is security. So security is it's something that every programmer should keep in mind. I mean, it's not just enough to keep our environment secure, right? Have the latest patches and all that stuff. Our application has to be built around concepts that have to do with security, and very important that we are aware of these things. One of the things that is added in the, I think it's upgrade 8, version 16, upgrade 8, I believe, is the option to use biometric authentication, so Face ID and fingerprint. This is something that our users have been requesting for a while, and it's finally here, so take advantage of that. So GAM has been available for a while now, so I'm not going to get into all a lot of the details that have to do with GAM. But if you are developing any type of complex application, you want to use GAM. If you're doing a mobile app, I would say GAM is almost mandatory. So that is something that, even though it's not necessarily new, I would say that you definitely want to look at it. The other thing is that there's been big improvements in interacting with other systems when it comes to GAM and having a single sign-on. So if you're trying to integrate with any other system, in terms of security, you definitely want to look at GAM, because there's a whole bunch of tools there that can help you do that very, very easily and very efficiently. So with that said, I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, you can go into the chat, and our operators are waiting for your questions. Or if you have been asking during this presentation, we'll be able to answer those questions now.
Q&A to post questions. Nicolas has been answering some of them, so please feel free to post your questions to Sergio now.
So I'm not 100% sure how this works, but I'm reading from the Q&A. Oh, there. Some third-party patterns generate styles which cannot be changed from within GeneXus. Is this something that only the vendor can correct? I'm not sure I understand the exact question. What do you mean by styles? But if it's something that is part of a pattern, you probably want to talk, if it's a third-party pattern, you probably want to talk to that vendor and ask them whatever you need to change, how to change it. The question is too generic for me to know what exactly you're referring to, Doug. But if you are trying to do something with that pattern that is not exactly, and it's not working exactly the way you want it to work, you probably do want to talk to the vendor. I mean, I'm personally, I work with the K2B tools pattern, and I'm familiar with that a little bit more than other patterns. So I could maybe answer some of those questions, but even then I would prefer to ask the K2B development team. And I know in that case, every style can be changed from within GeneXus, but I don't know about other patterns. I hope I've answered your question. So we can go to the next question. Gustavo asks, when or will be available chat engine with Azure? I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Nicolas, Sergio, if you're there, maybe you know the answer. I was not aware that it didn't work, by the way. So, okay, so the development team will answer in a minute. Okay, so do we want to wait for that answer, Nicolas, or should we go to the next one? I've been struggling a bit, Doug is asking, I have been struggling a bit to adapt to the GeneXus source control after being used to the GIT source control. Is there a resource I can use to try and adjust? Well, I think that you want to figure out what it is that you're having a hard time with, and either ask directly to support how do you do that specific thing, or if it's something generic, I guess I would have to ask, are you using GX Server, for example? Because Git is really like GX Server. So if you're not using GX Server, you might want to start using it. If you are already using GX Server, then maybe some specifics of what you're used to and what it is how it's different in GeneXus would help maybe create some kind of like a one-to-one reference of how it works in one platform and the other might help. That's the only thing I can think of to recommend to do that. Next question, please. When will the Angular generator, Danielle asks, when will the Angular generator be released? The Angular generator, the Angular generator was, well, we're a little bit behind with Angular. Originally, we had planned on having a beta version released by April, which means now, right? That is not out yet. We now think that it would probably be a couple months from now to have a beta version. There's more information about the Angular roadmap now on the, thanks, Nicolas, for that. There's a link there that has the roadmap. I think we're making a lot of progress when it comes to the Angular, but I don't have, I think we're a few months away from having a full-featured generator. And originally, I mean, at least at the beginning, Angular is going to be basically it's going to use the smart devices screens as the paradigm. Next question. DevOps, should we build functionality that depends on Jenkins, or will GeneXus be pulling Jenkins functionality into the IDE or integrating into Jenkins? So Scott, there's an integration already available for Jenkins. So you are going to be basically doing configuration in Jenkins, but it's going to be pulling directly information automatically from the IDE because it's already integrated. So you don't have to do the integration yourself. You just have to go to Jenkins and define what are the tasks that you want to do. Next question. Leandro Martinez asks, why GeneXus is not so popular in Canada? There is some intention to explore. So basically, Canada is treated as, okay, I don't want to say something that is politically incorrect, but for North America, we include both USA and Canada as pretty much as if it was a single market. So we don't have a separate strategy for Canada from the US. So there is no particular intention, but there are some companies that have recently being interested in maybe distributing GeneXus specifically in Canada, so maybe that would change. But at this point, Canada is basically managed as part of the US and Canada altogether. Next question, please. Next question, please. Which update of GeneXus 16 supports biometric login for mobile apps? So Doug, the GeneXus 16 upgrade 8 is the one that supports biometric login. Upgrade 8. Next question, please. Related to chatbot generator on Azure, Microsoft does not provide a full conversational API for us to work on. Once they have this API ready, we will include it. This is the answer from development of why.
From Azure. Yes.
Yeah. Is it possible to use Sketch also for web design or only for mobile design? So Daniel, at this point, it's only available for mobile, but the idea is to, I think we already have a beta for web, or we're working towards it. So the idea is to also have it available for web, but at this point, it's only available for mobile. Do you see more functionality coming soon on PWAs? As of GeneXus 16 at grade 5, the foundation was there, but we are interested in what is coming soon. Nicolas, do you want to answer that? I'm not sure where I know that more functionality will be added to PWAs, but I don't know if we have a roadmap for that.
We can leave this one with Nicolas and send it later on the answer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sergio, for the presentation. And thank you for attending our webinar. Thanks to everyone, which we've given to name as What's New in GeneXus 16 by Sergio Prusky. Remember to check our weekly webinars on the new GeneXus website. All content is free and 100% online. Please join us next Thursday, the 23rd of April, with a new webinar entitled What is a Low-Code Platform and how can it help you become better at your job? This is a new webinar in English by Sergio Prusky. So hope to see you soon, and please be safe. Goodbye, everyone.